The opinions you hear on Your Mountain from individual hosts or guests do not necessarily represent those of Your Mountain, our sponsors, or other entities we're affiliated with professionally or otherwise. You've waited long enough. Go listen to the show.
There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is Your Mountain. Hey everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. I'm your host, David Wilms, sitting directly next to me, arm's length from me, in my office, Nephi Cole.
Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you in person.
It's good to be in your office.
Yeah, it's really good to see you in person. Been a little bit since we've done one of these face-to-face.
I'm adjusting. Sounds pretty good. The volume's good. Is your volume good?
Yeah, the volume's good.
Okay, we're good.
Good. I'm going to start by saying we lied last time because we said last time we recorded, we're like, next time we're going to be on video.
And this could be, for all we know. It might not.
I don't think it's going to be. I'm not even on the video. We're testing it.
Yeah.
We got to figure this thing out.
No, we will.
And I don't think
we paid a lot of money for it.
So but I don't think we're not going to get it right this time.
We're going to fix it.
So we lied last time, said it was going to be on video. Not going to be on video. Almost certainly this time we're recording. It'll be audio only once again. But we're moving in that direction. We're technologically, I don't want to say inept, but we are
more challenged.
Are we reaching that age, that crossover point?
We've been there already.
Yeah, okay.
It's already happened. It's been a while now.
Where the world's passing us by.
Yeah, you don't know how your phone works. Admit it.
I know parts of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then I watch my kid.
Yeah, and the rest of your phone, like you know how to dial, and now you have to know how to text. But most things on your phone, like me, it's a black box. It's, there are things that your phone does all the time or can do that you don't know, and it frustrates you. Like, you don't know. And so then you have to Google how your phone works or tell your kid to do it for you. That's it. You're old.
Yeah, so we're old. So we're still doing this the old-fashioned way, the audio.
I think so.
Way.
We'll see when it all gets said and done. It could be that I'm wrong, but
no, you're right. Plus, my back is to the camera. Like I've already given up on recording on this one. We're just going to see if the recording works, but we're not going to use it.
Yeah, we'll know, but you won't know.
That's right.
The general public.
That's right. It's been an interesting week. So we released an episode. Like this is our second one
in a week.
And we're going to release this fast, right?
I'm trying to. I'm going to get home and try and download it because I don't have time to do it during the week.
Yeah, no, I know. We're gonna do this fast. We're gonna end up with having not had anything in a couple of months, and now we're gonna go bam, bam, and have a couple in a couple of days.
Yep, because I have to go to Idaho next week.
To lobby on a specific bill.
Yes, yes, Dave. There's a bill I'm interested in.
Tell me all about it.
It's a
segue extraordinaire.
Yeah, well, it's one of those bills, like, you have the junior high school kids who want to make, like, the red and white soccer ball the official soccer ball color for the state of Wyoming. Yeah. So this bill actually, Idaho didn't actually have this, and now this some young, enterprising child came up with the idea to make hunting the state sport of the state of Idaho and got a bill done for it. So it's going to, it's just like the state flower, and then it would be, what's Idaho's state sport? It'd be hunting.
And it's such an important thing that you're traveling there to support it.
I have to go visit guys anyway because it's like relationship building. Like that's what I like you go and you visit with legislators and just make sure. And it's interesting, and we haven't really talked about this on there, but that's a lot of what I do is like I work on legislation in different states and issues in different states. And as you know, a huge part of that, and this is something for our listeners too that's important, is like you can't have something that's important to you and just show up when that thing that's important to you is on the docket. Because if you do, then people ignore you because they've never seen you before. But when you walk into a state capitol and people already, like you've talked to your state legislators before, whether it's a constituent or somebody else or representing your organization, if you have a pre-existing relationship, then you can you can get to the issue in a more effective way. I often say this, and it really holds true. When you have a problem that you're working around, there are two ways to work around the problem. You sit at a table. If you can picture this as a metaphor, you all sit at a table, and you take the problem, you set the problem on the table in front of you, and you're on opposite sides of it, and then you argue over the problem from opposite sides of the table. Now, if you can take that problem and you can push it on the table in such a way that you can both sit at the same spot on the table and then look at that problem together, it's easier to fix the problem because you're no longer arguing over it, you're talking about it. And so that is exactly what happens when you already know a lawmaker, when you already know decision makers at a state agency or your local government, is if you have a pre-existing relationship, then when you arrive to talk to them, you go to coffee or whatever, they're like, oh man, this random constituent's coming to yell at me over parking spaces or wildlife management policies. No, it's Dave Wilms, right? And I know Dave Wilms. I talk to Dave Wilms all the time. I had coffee with him a month ago or whatever. And then you can show up and say, hey, I have this concern. I want to talk with you about wildlife corridors. Is that okay? Do you have time? Well, now your personal relationship has given you an avenue to be able to effectively talk about that subject, and it makes you better at it. And that's what, it's part of what I do is I go out and I visit with these agencies and these lawmakers and all these people so that hopefully they know me and we have a relationship of trust where I can be trusted when we talk about these issues. And it's what we should all be doing as we deal with natural resource and wildlife issues, is we should be, familiar enough with the decision makers that we're not just, showing up and demanding something. Because if you have that relationship, people care about, they don't, people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is true with people. Yeah. And so, so I'm actually going to visit with some lawmakers. It's a really easy bill. You're not asking anybody to lift anything heavy. You're just getting to know them and talking about, a child's legislation as they're trying to learn stuff and move it through the process.
I mean, my question, it was all serious and not to get less serious about it. No. But my question for those high school students in Idaho, if this bill passes
in Butte High,
can they letter in hunting?
I love that. I think that's a great question.
Like a school sanctioned sport.
I'm in.
Because normally with school sanctioned sports, those are excused absences.
This is getting to be a better idea all the time. So you could have a hunting coach at your high school and put together a hunting plan or even a training plan. Like you could have a training plan for hunting. This just got way deeper than I think that the child intended.
Right?
It's a great idea.
All of a sudden, October just becomes a school-sanctioned sporting event, and nobody's in the classroom.
Well, nobody on the hunting team.
Nobody on the hunting team is in the classroom. And then, how do you letter? Is it the number of days participated, or
I would think
do you have to be successful?
Well,
lettering is usually
showing up.
It's more than showing up. Sometimes for track, you got to be all district or all state, and what are the scoring metrics for this?
But in football, you don't have to win. You just have to be out on the field.
Well, yeah, but you have. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on.
I guess we're gonna have
to
deal
sport,
with this. Good luck, Idaho's High School Athletics Commission.
I think we're onto something here.
Yep. Well, we can be hired as consultants. It's not cheap, but our expertise is relevant.
Now, in Idaho, on this hunting team, after this law passes, they can use corners to access some public lands for hunting, right?
Yeah.
We're
going to talk about corner crossing.
I'm working on awesome segues today.
Well, maybe working on segues is a better way to put it.
Working on him?
Yeah, not like working on awesome segues. Maybe it's just working on segues.
I thought it was a pretty good transition. Yeah, we want to talk. I know we talked about it a lot ad nauseum on this.
Everybody wants to talk about corner crossing. You know why?
It's a big deal.
Attorneys. That's why.
Maybe.
I've decided that the whole issue with corner crossing is attorneys.
Why?
Well, because...
Yeah, I got to hear this.
Because if you just asked a regular person and there were no attorneys present in the room, they would just walk across the corner and it wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem is some attorney somewhere looked at the word and then two attorneys, the law of conservation of expertise comes into play. For every expert, there's an equal and opposite expert. And so now you get two experts and they're going to argue over whether or not you can do something that we all, if we could step back and not be attorneys, would agree is relatively simple, which is, of course, you can cross at the corner. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. But if you get two attorneys to argue over it, then it becomes more complex. And you can't help but falling into the complexity, and you start to agree with one attorney or the other because their job is to argue their point. And they're good at it. They're good at it. And so they're going to argue their point, and they're going to go to court over it. But that's their job. It's attorneys. Now, in court, who decides the decision? Who makes the decision? The judge. Right. Why? Because what you're hoping for, and this is why people take stuff to court, you're actually hoping that the judge in this case can rationalize things like a normal human being. And so both attorneys from opposite sides are arguing over the issue in front of the judge, hoping that the judge will think like a rational person and then will, help clear things up. Because that's the judge's job, is to listen to both of these arguments that are coming from the left field and right field, and the judge sitting in the center can make the logical decision. And this typically works very well unless the judge was an attorney, which they always were. So then you run into an issue where you're hoping that the judge will think more like a regular person than an attorney. And if they don't, then you move to the next level up, which is, when you have to do something like a trial by jury, in which case you're like, what, it can't all be attorneys. We got to get a bunch of regular people in here to see how regular people think because we've had too many attorneys involved.
I don't even know where you're going right now. You're taking me on this journey, and I don't even know what the destination is.
It just came to me, Dave, while I was driving. I was trying to figure out why we spend so much time on corner crossing, and I was like, Dave.
You just wanted that whole thing just so you could try and blame people like me.
Yeah, just so I could blame you for the fact that this is not solved already. Because I'm like, it's like when you went to Elk Mountain. I think we talked about this. But everybody, if we haven't, we're going to rehash it.
Yeah.
Like you went with a group to Elk Mountain, and you were telling me the story. And you're like, we were hiking up this thing, and we were doing the corner crossing. We'd go to each corner, and then we'd take out a compass, and then our survey gear, and we would basically survey every corner, and then you'd look up at the moon, and then you'd set up like an elaborate thing for how you were going to cross each corner to make sure that you were as in the center of everything as you possibly could. And then you got to one spot and you told me, and when we were stopped because there was a tree and we weren't quite sure where the pin was. And I said, well, did you just run and jump across it? And you said, no, we turned back. I was like, that's such an attorney thing to do.
Yeah, you almost got that right.
Well, it's close enough.
But let me say a couple things. The reason we're talking about this is because, well, one, you've heard us talk about, you've read stories, everybody's in the outdoor space has talked about the corner crossing case in Wyoming that the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decided early last year. And 10th Circuit found in favor of the hunters that were being sued by this landowner for crossing from one public piece to another without touching private land and momentarily passing their shoulder through the airspace of the private landowner. And the court said, you can do that, right? And so it seemed so simple on paper.
Yeah.
It seemed like, okay, this is easy. You can corner cross. And so the story you were relaying is, I wanted to see how easy that was on paper by going right back to that same mountain, Elk Mountain, in south central Wyoming, which is, if you drive I-80 across the state, it's really the most prominent mountain you'll see across the entire state of Wyoming. And went with a writer that was writing for Outdoor Life. And
who's a high school friend of my wife's, by the way.
Such a small world, isn't it? And so went with this writer, and you can go to Outdoor Life and read the whole story, so I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. But what we did find is I wanted to see what it would be like to just follow the absolute letter of the law. What did the court say you could do?
Yep.
And I want to be clear, the court didn't say you can't do all of these other things. It just said, I'll wait for you to unwrap this thing.
Yeah.
The court just said this very narrow set of facts is something that you can do. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to say, okay, I know this is what we can do. Can I do that thing and cross and summit this peak, which is a peak I've wanted to summit my whole life? Right? And the short answer, go read the story, but the short answer is no, I couldn't. And it wasn't from running into a tree. Actually, that was one of the corners, but we figured out a way to navigate that tree and still be able to cross and do it legally. We actually got to a spot where there was a damaged corner pin, and so it was incredibly difficult to know would we be on.
Yep, I rest my case
on public land, stepping from public to public.
Yeah, Your Honor, I rest my case. This man made this too complicated.
So I was trying to follow the letter of the law as written by the 10th Circuit. Now, that leads to this next point, which is, okay, so there's what the court says you can do, but the legislature, there's still some unanswered questions. For example, can you corner cross from state land to state land? That's not something the 10th Circuit addressed. They were addressing federal to federal.
Yep.
So can you cross from state to state? And so we've had a couple of, the reason we want to talk about this is we're right in the middle of state legislative season, right? This is your busy time of year, Nephi, really. We're right in the middle of these state legislatures, and we've got two right now that have introduced bills to try and clarify corner crossing in their respective states. There's a bill that's moving right now in the Wyoming legislature, and there's a bill in Oregon as well.
So we haven't talked about this since yesterday, but did the Wyoming bill actually move, or is it sitting?
No, it moved out of the Senate committee
but it had some amendments.
Another amendment to it, and so we can talk about that.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah,
because the bill as it originally
it's gotten really messy.
Yeah,
the amendment process.
As it was originally done, the idea behind the bill was that they were going to bring the bill, and then the bill was, the pitch was that this bill is going to help clarify this issue. And the problem with it is the way that it clarified the issue. And you're going to be, if I go into more details where it needs to, but when it clarified the issue, what it actually was doing was constricting the window, the Overton window of application. So, because for example, right now, like what it would have done is it was very specific in how you could cross the corner, and so you couldn't, for example, use cross corner if you had a horse with you. You couldn't, what didn't apply to kind of walking is what it applied to.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is, I think it was introduced to decriminalize, to officially decriminalize corner crossing. Meaning, I think the thought process, and I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, the folks that were behind writing this bill, but I think the thought process was, we have this 10th Circuit opinion that dealt with civil trespass. And we have criminal trespass laws in Wyoming, and so let's just clean things up and run a bill that decriminalizes corner crossing that's consistent with that 10th Circuit opinion, right? So write this bill that says basically if you cross from corner to corner and don't set foot on private land, but it does say on foot, or I think foot was amended in the House.
Gotcha.
If you cross on foot, then that's not a criminal trespass. And then it has similar language for crossing from state land to state land and local land to local land. So the idea was to decriminalize it.
Yeah, but the problem is, right, it only decriminalizes it now. It's more prescriptive in how you have to be crossing it in order for it to be decriminalized.
Yeah, so here's the thing I looked at, or I guess a general thought process, is The 10th Circuit, when they were looking at this, was applying the law to a very narrow set of facts. And the narrow set of facts was there was these posts that with a chain across it that were in turn violating the Unlawful Enclosures Act by preventing people from accessing this public land. It was federal land to federal land. It was using this ladder to cross over without setting foot on any private land. And based on that narrow fact pattern, the court said, yep, what they did was not a trespass. Okay? But they didn't say, for example, what if you run into a tree or an obstruction at a corner and you physically can't cross at the exact spot? Can you walk around that? They didn't address that question. And the reason I think that's important is the court only answered the question that was before it. It didn't set the total bounds on what a legal corner cross might be, meaning there could be a future case at some point down the line with a different set of facts where a court could look at it and say, yeah, that's a permissible corner cross as well. And so this bill was putting really tight sideboards on.
Yeah, it was grabbing that tube of possibilities and squeezing it down quite a bit.
And so the issue with that, I guess, right? It might be fine. You might make the policy decision and state that that's fine, and it matches generally what the law currently says is permissible. But what if a federal court expands that down the road in a different case, in a different state, but within the same circuit, or within the same state, within Wyoming in the same circuit? What if you end up with a case like that expands it a little bit, and now you've got a federal opinion that's in conflict with a state law, and under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, the federal law trumps state law, and so it's possible that be the case. There's also a weird legal theory. I haven't even thought this through, so I'm throwing this out in the ether, and I haven't even thought it through, so please nobody say that's a dumb idea or a great idea or anything. But the Unlawful Enclosures Act, for example, is written in a way that I don't have the exact words in front of me, but it's something to the effect of you can't use intimidation or there are certain acts in addition to constructing a barrier or that effectively lock somebody out. And so is there an argument that a state passing a law that effectively prevents people from accessing public land in other ways that might otherwise be legal? Is that a violation of the Unlawful Enclosures Act in and of itself?
I don't know. I'd have to ask an attorney.
Yeah, I'd have to actually spend some time in it. I'm just making it up as we're talking. So I'm throwing a theory out there.
I'm just kidding.
Just totally making up.
But that's the issue, right? You're making these things more complex. This would make things more complex rather than clarifying it and making it more simple.
Well, I don't know about that. It would make it simple. So it would make it simple in one respect in that you'd know if I'm crossing on foot, doing it this way, I'm not going to be criminally prosecuted.
But you're creating, but you're also creating, to me, the confusion becomes because you're creating this new thing around the backside, because you're probably going outside of your authority. You talked about the Supremacy Clause, and you actually see this quite a bit in our current political environment, which is this tendency within states to kind of almost ignore the, overarching, some agreements that we've made as a nation between all of our states of okay, we're gonna defer to the federal, to some higher authorities than just us on this. And to me, this is one of those issues. And there are others in other areas that are important to me, but where again you have states passing laws that you're kind of questioning whether they don't conflict with federal law.
Yeah, we don't know. There might not be a conflict. There might be a conflict. It gets resolved down the line. But there are a couple of other things that I wanted to mention that are unresolved issues, but also that might complicate it. There was an amendment added on the Senate side yesterday before it passed out of committee that adds a new complication because now it only decriminalizes at those corners on foot so long as there's an actual marker,
yep.
legal survey marker that's there, right? I can tell you definitively that there are corners out there that
don't have a
marker and haven't had them for years. Somebody's pulled them. They've been damaged. Maybe they've been buried and you can't find them.
They're lost.
They
were lost in a boating accident.
And I can also tell you that the federal government doesn't have the resources or the manpower to go out there and be resurveying these things all the time and putting new survey pins in all of these corners. They might not even be aware of until somebody brings it to their attention.
Shout out to the U.S. Geological Survey. You guys are amazing.
Yeah, and it's not just USGS that does it, but they are amazing, right? But BLM's got their own surveyors that do stuff too.
They're not as good as USGS.
They got some good surveyors. But now you've got this new language in there that becomes even more prescriptive and more restrictive on being able to corner cross. And then there's this question of liability. So this bill proposes to decriminalize, but it doesn't deal with what I think are some of the remaining questions around civil liability. And so, for example, I'll give you two examples. We'll go duty of care, what's called duty of care, and then we'll go with liability. So duty of care, meaning who is responsible if somebody is injured when they're corner crossing? Here's the thing I would throw out. If somebody is trying to climb over a fence that happens to be there, for example, and they get their leg caught in the wire and fall and break a leg, you're laughing like it's something you've maybe done before or have witnessed.
There's some stories I have about people crossing fences in accidents that we're not going to go to on this podcast, but it's happened.
But it happens, right? Yes. And so there is a question that is unanswered with this bill and with the court case.
In fact, some of the worst hunting accidents that I know of, both humorous and not, are people crossing fences. Seriously?
No, I've seen some myself.
No, right? I know everything from the comically the comical, male problems to literally people getting shot.
Accidental discharge.
Yes.
I've seen those
changing their lives.
Yeah. So it's an important question. If it's the landowner's fence, do they become liable for an injury that occurs at that corner? I don't think anybody would want that to be the case, but it's not expressly addressed in the bill. So there's that liability question. There's also, one of the things that caused us to turn around on our hike, right, when we were trying to summit the peak. Again, go back and read that Outdoor Life story on it. But you get to this spot.
Other than lack of courage?
So there was some lack of courage, but also we were going to do things by the book, right? And we were crossing at the same place on the same land that those hunters did, right? We were crossing at the same place where that landowner owns everything. And I wasn't worried about a criminal trespass because in Wyoming law, here's the other thing. In Wyoming law, if I'm just hiking, it's the duty's on the landowner to post the property as no trespassing. And if they don't, I'm not going to be cited for a criminal trespass. There was nothing posted past the first corner, but every other corner there were no signs saying no trespassing, all that kind of stuff. So there wasn't going to be, in my situation, I wasn't going to be prosecuted for criminal trespass. But if I didn't do things right, and I set foot on private land at one of these corners trying to cross, there was a chance I could be sued for civil trespass. And you don't really have to show damage. You can get a nominal damage award of $100, but I'd be on the hook for having to defend myself to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars against this because you have somebody that has the resources to challenge anybody that's crossing.
Yeah, just wants to make an example.
And wants to make it hard and discourage other people from going to that place, right? And there were cellular trail cams on every corner, and there was snow on the ground. So camera, footprint, picture of me. If I'm not crossing in the right place, all the evidence matches up. And I didn't I didn't want that. So
Attorneys.
I turned around, right? But it's an issue that's not addressed through this bill. And now it's been amended in these multiple ways. And you have, here's the last thing I'll say, and then I want to pivot to Oregon because it's where the other bill is. So you have this interesting situation where you have a conservation in the West poll that Colorado College just released about a week and a half ago. And it highlights how much people care about public lands and keeping them public. I don't want to make up the number. I don't have it in front of me, but it's in that 80% range. It's a high percentage of people that are like, we don't think you should be selling public lands. So, and access to public lands is really, really important. Well, you are now in an election year, and there's another bill going through, a resolution going through that started on the Senate side that's moving through to recognize, the importance of local input, but also saying a resolution to the federal government basically saying don't sell federal lands and then encourage local involvement in decision-making about how those lands are managed. So the public doesn't want to see, they want access, they don't want to see public lands sold. You've got this other resolution running through, you're in an election year, and you got a bunch of folks, and this is a very heated issue, and particularly in the hunting community, that, you don't want to be viewed as taking a non-public access vote. At the same time, you have an ag community that's kind of concerned about how access occurs, and you don't want to be viewed as taking an anti-ag vote. And so you have this bill that creates this tension point between the hunting community and ag and puts these legislators in a spot in an election year where it's it's bad either way for them, how, if they vote in support or against this. So it's tough, and then I've heard rumors that there's some that are interested in potentially throwing more amendments out, maybe on the floor, to remove the decriminalization of access to state lands.
Yeah, which is interesting because you'd have this thing now where you're saying like, hey, what this bill is really going to do is we're just trying to clarify this, but in saying they're trying to clarify it, what you're doing is potentially ratcheting down on, you're clarifying, but in clarifying, you're clarifying it at a very small level. You're ratcheting, you're closing the tube on what's possible. But then the other thing is, if at the exact same time you're going in and you're saying, and you strip the state lands piece, then
you've lost your clarity.
That's not necessarily a good thing for hunters. I think it's problematic. Now, there's another state that's working on a similar bill. There's a corner crossing bill moving in Oregon, correct? And you can tell me how, but I think it's a significantly, I don't know if it's I don't think more complex is the way to put it. I think it's more holistically, there's more to it.
I would say it's more comprehensive.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
It's been introduced and it's in committee right now. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I know there's some bipartisan support there, but I don't know, haven't followed it quite as closely. But from a textual standpoint, it decriminalizes, it defines public land, first of all, very specifically, as federal lands, state lands, local lands. It excludes tribal lands. So our bill doesn't even address the tribal lands piece, which might be a blind spot in our own bill in Wyoming. And then it addresses things like the civil liability, the civil trespass concern. And I just want to read that piece really quick because it's a piece that doesn't exist in the bill that was proposed here, but in Wyoming, but it's in here. So it says an owner of private land may not bring an action for trespass. So this means no civil trespass against a person that corner crosses, provided that person is authorized to enter and remain on public land. Okay. So that basically the federal government hasn't prohibited people being on those lands. B, that person does not cause physical harm to the private landowner's real or personal property. So there's not an articulable damage there, right? And 3, does not unreasonably interfere with the quiet enjoyment or use of the private landowner's property. And then there's a third piece of this that says a person that corner crosses may not bring a claim for negligence or gross negligence against a private landowner for damages arising out of the act of corner crossing. So remember that fence injury we were talking about? This bill addresses that, saying if you're corner crossing, the landowner's not liable. You can't bring a negligence claim or gross negligence claim. Like so this bill goes through, and then it actually goes through and has another section about so that was the civil piece, and then it has another section that's decriminalizing the act. So saying doing this isn't subject to state criminal statute, but it also talks about what corner crossing is. So it defines corner crossing as meaning to cross on foot from one parcel of public land to another parcel of public land by stepping across the corner where the two parcels of public land and one or more parcels of privately owned land meet, which is pretty close to what ours says, but it doesn't say, it says stepping over, but it doesn't say by foot. The one thing ours does is it pretty much prohibits, like you couldn't take your dog unless you carry your dog across, right? Can't take horses, couldn't take,
unless you carry your horses across.
So here there might be an opportunity for that. Because what if you have maybe you can build a ramp for your horse to walk over these corners without touching the private land. Or maybe what this one's saying is if you set foot on private land, you didn't cause any damage or hurt the enjoyment of the property, so you can't be sued for civil trespass there. So I just think this was it's more comprehensive and covers the whole range of issues around corner crossing. Now, it may not go anywhere, and there may be some fights about it, and it's in the Ninth Circuit, so the 10th Circuit opinion doesn't apply to Oregon. They're doing something more proactive, not in response to a case in their own state. But I guess my point is, when you compare the two, the Oregon proposal appears to be far more comprehensive and addresses a lot of the issues that the one in Wyoming doesn't yet. And I think there's an opportunity and look, I'm grateful to the people that have been working on the bill in Wyoming and that brought it and care. They're passionate about public access and want it to be, want the public people to access these corners. It just, as you're watching this process play out and the amendments play out and the discomfort that some people are having, it just makes you think maybe we can spend a little bit more time and get something a little more comprehensive that everybody feels good with. Do you see this as being an interim topic? I don't. I don't. And in fact, I think there's some reluctance to have it be an interim topic.
Interim topic for everybody is, if you have a legislature that is not a full-time legislature, a lot of times you'll have committees that will pick up a topic and they'll do multiple hearings on the topic during the year so that they can discuss these kind of nuances that you don't have time to discuss, during like a fast session. So you basically work through and develop, the committee will develop legislation. So that's what an interim topic is.
Yeah, I haven't heard of there being a ton of appetite for this to be an interim topic, but I think you could make the case that there's an appetite to say, hey, all the various parties that are interested in this, maybe we can just sit down and work together, and we don't need an interim topic to talk and to work on language, right? And this is, we didn't mention it, but this is a budget cycle. So this is a short session.
So you see the bill passing in Wyoming?
I mean, it passed the House already. It's out of committee in the Senate. It's going to go today while we're recording. I think it's going to go to committee of the whole on the floor of the Senate. It's possible it gets amended to the point that it doesn't pass.
Interesting.
But I if I had a crystal ball, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. It's possible it could pass.
Well, I want to say this about the Oregon bill, and this is why I think this is a good discussion. Because you mentioned this issue, it's bipartisan.
It is.
And here's why I'm saying that. Oregon can't agree on anything. Like, if you go to that session, you're to watch it, and like the level of partisanship that is on display in the arguments there it's brutal. But consider public lands now. Here's an area, this is an issue that is clearly bipartisan, where people will work on it on both sides. These are the types of things that we want our lawmakers doing more of across the board. You know, the current political climate has lent itself to people choosing fringe topics that are divisive. And unfortunately, like that, you know, I can say that in every state capital that I have gone to, and I don't think I'm not reinventing I'm not, if people don't know this, there's a saying, red states have gotten redder and blue states have gotten bluer in the last several years. And that is really the case, is that you've had this solidifying of arguments where, for whatever reason, the polarization of our politics has led to, when you go into a state house, less collaboration across issues that we all share, and more of a trend for people to run to their prospective wings and argue about stuff that we just don't, or that we're not going to agree on. And unfortunately, it's an election year. So, of course, you know, people are posturing and doing things like that. And I talked to some colleagues that you and I shared the other day, Dave. I had lunch with a number of people from our old office.
I didn't get an invite to this lunch.
So anyway,
this is a deeper conversation.
Oh, it is. But did you have dinner the other night without me?
Hey,
well, Dave, this looks like the shoe goes on both feet, doesn't it?
That is different. That is different.
But I will frankly say, I think that we have challenges in leadership. And why? You know, we talked about it. I think that nationally and on state levels, our current policies, our current politics are devoid of leadership. We have a leadership void overall. Well, what do I mean by that? What is real leadership? Real leadership is being willing to push outside of your comfort zone and to bring people to that table that we talked about at the beginning. And to take real leadership is being willing to take people and to push the problem to the middle of the table and sit on the same side with everybody and to talk collaboratively about how we fix issues. That's real leadership. Real leadership doesn't pick a side of the table and argue and blame everybody else for your problems. Real leadership says, we all share these problems. Let's find a way to fix them. And we really, when you find these leaders and you have them in your agencies, when you have them in your local, state, and national politics, cherish them, support them, find a way to keep them doing their jobs and doing good things, because these are the types of leaders that will make a difference in changing the political climate that we're in, that is, can be toxic. And just want to encourage you all to do that. Identify those people who aren't running to the margins and screaming from the fringe to get your attention, but people who are saying you know what, we got problems, let's work on them together, because that's real leadership. And if you're not doing this right now, change and be a leader.
So in that vein, to pile on one more thing, and I'm going to come back to this Wyoming bill with it, right? Because if for some reason this bill dies, and it might, I can already predict people coming out of the woodwork that are going to claim this legislature as anti-public land, anti-access, not wanting to allow corner crossing, right? Resist the urge to pile on, to get onto that pile, right? Resist that urge, because it might actually be better in the long haul if this bill doesn't pass and has an opportunity to be worked out and be more holistic and address all of these various issues in the future. And they might be doing a favor in some ways if they vote no. And they're not being anti-public access. It might be actually quite the opposite of that. And so there's, with everything, there's so much nuance, right? Don't take the bait of if somebody's out there saying, these folks voted no on corner crossing, they're anti-public access. Be careful on that, right? Because you might be surprised. You might have some allies there, and you don't want to burn that potential bridge and dissuade them from ever doing anything in the future. Right? So that's just kind of another thought too. I want to pivot to another topic really quick.
Is this an amazing segue?
No, I don't have a great segue for this.
So okay. New topic.
Just a new topic.
Yep.
Lesser prairie chicken.
That's exciting.
Isn't it exciting? You can just, the name alone sounds exciting.
You know what? I had some hot wings last night.
Were they lesser prairie chicken hot wings?
I don't think so.
Or that's why you were saying.
No, but just reminded me of that when you said lesser prairie chicken.
Because as of yesterday, I guess you probably could have had lesser prairie chicken hot wings because they're not listed as a federal threatened or endangered species anymore.
That's exciting. That is the best news I have heard today.
So here's the deal. I don't know if it's good news or not, or not good news. Lesser prairie chickens are one of those species that we talk where we live a lot about sage grouse and grizzly bears and wolves, and there's a lot of political division and controversy around those, and a lot of controversy around the ESA around those. If you're in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, lesser prairie chicken is one of those. Like, it's one of those kind of controversial ones, right? So lesser prairie chickens were initially like 2014. I wish I had I'm trying to go on memory here, so forgive me. But I think it was in about 2014 they were originally listed. Because I was actually involved in the first round of litigation involving lesser prairie chicken in a prior life. So they were originally listed. Then you had 5 different lawsuits filed and venue fights and so forth. And I was actually one of the ones I was involved in. I moved to intervene in a case in Washington, D.C., and then there were 2 cases filed in D.C., and there were 2 cases filed in Oklahoma, and there was a case filed in the West District of West Texas. And there's this whole venue fight in Oklahoma and D.C., and everybody's fighting about where this case should be heard. Should it be in D.C. where the decision was made, or should it be in Oklahoma where, the birds are, all that kind of stuff, right? And it wound up at the end of the day that the 2 cases that were in Oklahoma got transferred to D.C., and the 2 cases that were in D.C. got transferred to Oklahoma. And when all of that stuff was going on, the judge in West Texas was like, I'm just going to decide this. And
that's the most Texas thing I've ever heard.
and so
let's just fix this. This is ridiculous.
And so that judge vacated that listing rule on grounds we don't even need to go into right now. And then that led to another petition in 2016 to list lesser prairie chicken as threatened or endangered, and if threatened or endangered, using distinct population segments, which we've talked about. I don't want to go into all the wonkiness about it, but basically they're separate islands of population that are totally genetically separate from the other islands of population.
Yep.
And so they can be listed as entities on their own.
Yep.
Right? And that petition was received, and then after litigation and so forth to push the service to make a decision on whether or not to list, the service in 2022 made a decision to list 2 entities of lesser prairie chicken. One, both as distinct population segments. One is threatened, one with a 4D rule, which we also won't talk about, and one as endangered. And of course, that drew additional litigation. And that litigation, states were challenging it, industry folks were challenging it. There's this big fear about it's going to shut down. Like, if you know anything about where lesser prairie chickens are, particularly in New Mexico and Texas, if you know where the Permian Basin is and what that is, there's an awful lot of oil and gas that comes out of the Permian Basin. So there's a huge risk of shutting down a big industry there with this listing decision. So there's litigation around it. And in August of last year, I think it was West Texas actually, but a district court on a motion from the Fish and Wildlife Service. So here's what happened. So we have this litigation ongoing, and then we have an administration change at the federal level, right? And so the Trump administration comes in January of 2025, and about 5 days into the administration, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service sends a petition or a motion to the court saying, we think we made a mistake in setting up these distinct population segments, and we want you to vacate the rule and then remand it back to us to redo. Right? And so in August of last year, the court said, well, the experts are saying they made a mistake. So we're going to remand it back. They didn't give a deadline in that remand, by the way. In the opinion, the Fish and Wildlife Service says, we think we can get a new finding done by November 30th of 2026. 2026. So this November. But the court doesn't order that they do a new 12-month finding by November 30th. The court just says remanded to the agency. That was in August. Well, this week, the agency finally published in the Federal Register the notice that it was moving forward with initiating its 12-month review. So 6 months after the rule was remanded, which means 6 months after the species was removed from the threatened and endangered species list, it gets this notice saying we're going to start this 12-month process. And all I could do when I looked at that, just as a guy that has followed ESA stuff forever, is be like, oh, I think I see the strategy here. And it's under the law.
Okay. So I want to understand the strategy.
All right. Better. Under the law.
Okay.
Under the Endangered Species Act.
Okay.
When you start a 12-month review, when you initiate a 12-month review, when the service initiates that.
Okay.
You have 12 months. You have 12 months, not 12 months in one day, not 12 months in a week, not 13 months, not 2 years. You have 12 months to do the review and make a determination on whether the species warrants being listed or not.
Yep.
Right?
It's set in the statute. You got to get it done in that time period.
It's a shall thing.
Yep.
You got to do it.
You will. You're doing it.
Now, the Fish and Wildlife Service has a history of not meeting those deadlines and getting sued. And a lot of the history is you hear the sue and settle. We've talked about it before.
They sue them because of that. You didn't get to the deadline in time. And so then you're going to lose that lawsuit because you didn't comply with the law. So now you're in the settle mode.
Right. Well, and in the context, we've talked about it in the past on this podcast, it's like you have somebody like Center for Biological Diversity that'll flood the zone. They'll submit 500 petitions to list species.
Too many for you to possibly catch all of them.
There's no way.
And when you miss one, they're like, aha.
And so they sue, and then they force the Fish and Wildlife Service to settle because they know they're going to lose these lawsuits. Right?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, then they have these dates certain that they have to make these decisions and so forth. And there's the argument being made that now you have these environmental groups that are kind of controlling the caseload, so to speak, of an agency, like the workload of an agency.
Yeah, they're determining what you're going to work on, when and where, and they're going to tell you that sometimes too. They're going to say, like, yeah, you're going to do these. This is our priority, so it better be your priority.
Yeah, and then at the end of this, because of the way the statute is written, if the suing party prevails, they are entitled to their attorney's fees. Right? So the sue and settle thing has been used in the past, and it's generated a lot of money for some of these organizations from litigation fees, right? Because they're able to charge not necessarily what their hourly rate was, but maybe the prevailing rate of the community in which they lived. Like, so maybe they might be making $75,000 or $80,000 a year in a town, and that would bill out at $35 an hour or something like that. But they're actually able to charge like $600 an hour because that's what
DC.
The prevailing. Yeah.
Because
right. You don't know, right? So that's the model. But the thing that fascinates me about this is I can see this in my head, how this is going to play out. You have an administration here that doesn't want to list lesser prairie chickens. Now, I don't want to get into the science of do they warrant listing or not. That's for the agency to lean into and make that determination. But you have an agency here that maybe doesn't want to because two of its big constituencies, the energy industry and the ag industry in this area, could be injured by a listing, right? It could hurt business for sure.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be responsible for hurting that business. So how do you avoid making a decision? Well, you release this 12-month finding right now, or start the 12-month finding right now. Gather information until, whatever. You're moving forward, gathering information, taking comment. A year rolls by. You get to late February, early March of 2027. nothing. No, you don't make the decision. You just wait. You wait, and a few more months might go by. You just wait until one of those groups inevitably sues you for missing that deadline. And then you go through a certain amount of time in that litigation before you engage in settlement discussions. And then you negotiate a date at some point in the
because
future.
There's not set in the statute. There's not like it's the 12-month finding is set in statute, but like the resolution after that, the timing is not set.
Well,
right?
Yeah, 12 months is 12 months. That's when it's supposed to get done. But if they don't do it, the court order, you can't go back and say, we're not going to fine the agency. We're not going to throw people in jail. We're going to try and say, you missed your deadline. You have to do this. So you need to agree to a date that you're going to get this done, and I'll sign off on it as the judge. And so they'll negotiate and come up with the date of here's when we'll have it done.
Yep.
And based on the way this
but that
all
window
plans
is
out,
flexible now. You can that window's negotiable now. It's not set as like it's not set in statute. It's set by parties.
Yeah, and the way that the timing of this all pans out, it appears to me, and I'm just looking at my crystal ball, and I'm going to rub the top of the crystal ball here and look into it and say, this feels like a strategy to avoid having to make an up or down determination before the end of this term. Or if it happens at all, it'll be in the last couple of months of the term. Like between a November election, between like a November election and a January inauguration, if it happens at all. And the irony a little bit of it is we talked about the sue and settle tactics, and some of the same people that might be complaining about these environmental groups getting their attorney's fees paid, they're using that strategy knowing we're not going to do anything until they make us do something. We're going to let them sue us. So it's almost a strategy. But then at the end, they know we're going to have to pay the attorney's fees. But we're willing to do that because we don't want to have to make a decision on it right now.
Yeah, so you're saying the agencies are thinking that way.
It's
just a thought that they could be.
I don't know what they're thinking. I might be totally wrong about this.
But that's very interesting. That is an interesting wrinkle. And then, and arguably, like, you may get better rates. Because, like, so let's just say you had friends who are, like, on both sides of the discussion. That's pretty interesting.
So at the end of the day, like, I don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. But what I do know is there are a lot of, like, I do know this. Lesser prairie chicken numbers have been in steady decline for a long time. There just aren't a ton of them left. They're not in great shape. There are habitat issues. There's fragmentation issues for sure. What I also know is there are a lot of really smart people, really passionate people that have put in place a lot of voluntary conservation programs on the ground. There are mitigation banks. There are conservation plans. There are candidate conservation agreements with assurances, like all of these things working with industry and landowner communities trying to mitigate harm to lesser prairie chicken. And just my hope, and I'll just say it this way, my hope is as this whole thing plays out on the will they or won't they list them and court cases that come, that people that are doing that work on the ground keep doing that work on the ground. And that they still take seriously the need to conserve lesser prairie chicken and lesser prairie chicken habitat because it's important.
America needs hot wings.
I know that sounded wonky. It's just something.
No, that was fun. That was good. That was fun.
I just think it's interesting.
No, that's a fun discussion.
So,
all right. Well,
yeah,
we're going to end this early. You know why, Dave? Because we don't know how long. Because of this new program that we're trying, that we got to make sure we can make everything work before your next engagement.
Yep, that's a fact. So, the other thing we're going to do before too long is I think we're going to get a new email address.
Yeah.
So stay tuned on that. But for the time being, you can still use yourmountain@itsyourmountain.com if you want to send us any emails. But I think we're changing some things here. So I think we're going to end up with a new email address before too long. We will get that out to everybody when we have it. You can go find us on social media too, on Instagram and Facebook in particular.
We should probably lean into that and away from the website. Because the website's ridiculous. Because we don't do it anyway.
So that's what I was kind of getting at is we're going to take the website down, which means that the email address is likely going to go away because it's tied to that.
Yeah. And then we'll be on the gram all the time.
Then we'll be fully dedicated to IG.
Mm-hmm. And you'll join us at Chipotle as we eat food that's probably not good for you, but it sounds like it is. It's delicious. Theory.
They're not sponsored. They should be. All right. But yeah, reach out to us, send us topic ideas. I got a couple topic ideas in the inbox that I got to look at. There were a couple of interesting ones.
What were they? Are you going to share them on the air?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, that's not going to help.
So I can't share them on the air right now.
See you later, buddy. Thanks for emailing.
For those that have
We're getting rid of the email, so glad you sent it, but you better resend it to the new email because it's gone.
Yeah, and for folks that have emailed in the last 3 months,
sorry.
I'm slowly responding to those. I'm sorry. We got really bad at podcasting and emailing and all the things. So anyway, that's that wrap up. Awesome to see you in person, Nephi, as always. I wish we could do more of these in person.
We're going to do more in person those next couple months. We're going to be hanging out quite a bit.
I think we're going to see more of each other.
A lot of the same conferences.
Yeah, that's true. So looking forward to that. And to everybody else, thank you for listening. As always, deeply, deeply appreciated. And remember that life is about experiences, so go have one.